Hey, Ryan, thanks for doing this. I just want to ask you about the balancing act that you have to walk in terms of getting your team ready for the season while still preventing injuries. I mean, just what is it like to make sure you do enough live stuff in practice where you're getting your guys ready to block and tackle and do everything you need to do while still not doing too much of it where, because you want to limit injuries? Is that a difficult balancing act for you?
Yeah, and not only is it difficult, it's not even a daily conversation. It's an hourly conversation that we're having with our staff because, we have to make sure that we're ready to tackle, that we're ready to come off the ball and ready to take care of the football in all phases, offense, defense, and special teams. So there's a fine line there. We have, a big practice tomorrow in the Horseshoe. We'll be in the stadium. We'll have an opportunity to bring people to the ground there. But you got to get that work in, real soon, probably by the middle of next week. You got to have a lot of that taken to the ground behind you so that as you get closer to the first game, you're keeping guys healthy. But the only way to get ready to play football is to play football. And if you have a whole preseason to get ready, that's one thing. But this is unique. And so we're going to have to tackle. We're going to have to really work at that and figure out creative ways to get our guys ready to play because, there's no wasted time as Nebraska's coming in here on the 24th. We've got to be ready to roll.
And how do you envision things kind of working out at running back this year for you guys? I know it's obviously very early, but do you think it's going to be running back by committee? Do you envision one guy kind of being that lead guy? Just how do you think things are going to kind of go at running back for you guys?
We'll see. I mean, we have more depth there than we've had in a long time. We have right now, we feel good about 5 of our guys. Marcus is still, coming off of that ACL, but we have good depth there. We're going to play depth. We've always liked to play depth. So as we get into these first couple of weeks, it's a good battle. Master's the incumbent and obviously did a great job last year. And then Trey's come in and done a really good job as well. Both really versatile, but the other guys have done a really nice job as well. Xavier Johnson's done a really good job. Steele Chambers and now Mayan's really getting an opportunity to play. So, all 5 of those guys are doing a great job and looking forward to get Marcus back. So a lot of depth there, which is exciting. And that competition will continue.
Thank you, Ryan.
All right, next up we have Bill Landis from The Athletic with Austin Ward on deck. Bill.
Hey, Ryan. Justin said maybe a week or so ago that there were times, I guess, but before you all got back to practicing kind of full go like you are now, where he and you got a lot of one-on-one time to work on his mechanics and just sort of talk about the intricacies of the position. And I'm wondering, in those times, what came across to you in terms of how much Justin has grown sort of maybe in the mental aspect of the game, but also, the finer points of playing the position, whether that's mentally or physically?
Yeah, I think, Corey Dennis has done a really good job during this time of meeting with the quarterbacks. He's got a unique situation. He's got, somebody who's come back and has a whole year under his belt, and then some young guys in there that he's got to kind of catch up to speed. So he's done a good job there. But when Justin and I have had an opportunity to be together and talk football, it's been really refreshing because I think one of the things for Justin is things have come easy to him, whether it's on the field and, he learns things quickly. And so what I've seen with him in the second year is his approach. I mean, he's really on it in meetings. He's alert. He's asking hard questions. He's taking notes. He's really on it. And I think when you have a year under your belt, you realize the consequences of every game, every snap, the preparation that comes in play. He asks the right questions going into practice. If he's not sure, he makes sure he has it right. And then he also is holding people accountable. Because at the end of the day, if it doesn't work, it's usually on the quarterback, the offensive coordinator, and the head coach. And so he understands that now. So if things aren't exactly the way that he sees it, he gets with those guys. He has those communications. So his leadership's been excellent.
And are you guys giving DeJuan Jones a look at guard at all? I thought I saw maybe a picture where it looked like DeJuan was playing guard.
Yeah, DeJuan's done some really good things for us this year. He's somebody that has a lot of athletic ability and has some good versatility. So, yeah, we've moved him around a little bit, and he's somebody that we hope can play and get on the field for us this year.
Next up is Austin Ward from Letterman Row with Tony Gerdeman on deck. Austin.
Ryan, when you talk about creativity with the practice, how does that extend to Gunner and the freshman quarterbacks? You've talked before about Justin needing a bunch of reps to get ready. How will you manage the backups behind him so that you can maybe sort through a competition there?
Yeah, you try to do everything you can to make sure Justin's ready to go. That's the number one priority. So he gets the reps with the ones, and then we split up the reps with the twos. When we go to 7-on-7, we try to equal them out a little bit more and allow those guys to get more reps in the 7-on-7. But really, what we're doing is, Jack and CJ are both getting a bunch of reps with the twos, and we try to mix Gunner in as much as we can. Gunner had kind of last year, and so we're trying to get the other guys up and running because they didn't have a spring or a preseason to kind of see where we're at because we have such a short preseason leading into this. And then as time goes on, Gunner will start getting more and more reps. But it's been good. I think all three of those guys, CJ, Jack, and Gunner have done a really good job of picking up the offense, and since they've been here. And they're going to have to be ready to go because this year, you have to have depth at every position. So that's a very, very important area that we have to make sure that those guys are ready. They're one snap away. They're one day away from being in that first game. So they've got to do a good job. And, Corey Dennis has done a good job up to this point.
Is it possible at all with CJ and Jack that you guys haven't had a chance to see them in a live setting? Would you ever make a quarterback live in a practice just to see how they respond or take some hits, especially, the young guys where you don't have any idea really how they'd respond?
Probably not, but I'm not saying no because I'd like to see how this weekend goes and see what it looks like, see how it feels, and take it one day at a time. I'm trying not to say always and never right now because things change so fast. But it's not something we've typically done, but doesn't mean we won't do it. Like to your point, we got to know what we have going into the first game, if something were ever happen. And so we'll see. But as of right now, they're not live.
Thanks, Ryan.
Right up next is Tony Gerdeman from Buckeye Scoop with Nathan Baird on deck. Tony.
Ryan, given how well Pete Werner played last year at Sam, how involved were you in the decision to move him to Will?
Like everything else, we talk about it. We meet every day and have great conversation. I think that, Greg Madison and Al Washington, both felt like, Pete could really have an impact in there at Will. And so he's picked that up really fast. I mean, I couldn't be more impressed with the way he's approached this summer, the way he's approached the last couple of weeks. He's like a professional, and he's a leader. He sees things fast. He diagnoses things fast. He can do a lot of things. He's very versatile. I think he's going to have a major impact at Will. I think it's a great position for him.
Any trepidation based on everything he was able to do for you guys last year?
Well, we'll see, based on our depth, what the best fit and the best mix is. I don't think we've come up to that decision yet. I mean, that's still a work in progress. And if that were to happen, it is. But I think he can have a better impact in there at Will. And as we project it out, we see that being the best position for him. But like you said, that could change quickly as we know. So we'll kind of see. But the good thing about Pete is he can handle a high level of information. He can process information quickly. And I think he can handle two positions if it comes down to that.
And then real quick, have you heard anything from the NCAA about how scholarship limits are going to work in the next period of time with everybody getting a free year this year?
Yeah. There's a process. It's a long process. It's a very confusing metrics that, it took me about 3 hours to sit down with Mark Pantoni to kind of figure it all out. This is kind of a +1 based on seniors and years of eligibility. It's confusing. It's not easy, but I don't see us being over 85 even next fall as I project it all out with guys leaving to go to the NFL, guys graduating, different things. I still think we'll be at 85 for us, but we'll see. And it's going to be something we're going to have to continually talk about and work through.
Thank you.
Right up next is Nathan Baird from Cleveland.com with Dan Hope on deck. Nathan.
Hey, Ryan, last year you talked about how you brought in that vision of the three corners and the single high safety and how that kind of set the stage for what you guys did defensively. Curious, Kerry is talking a lot more about doing like multiple looks on defense. It's sort of like, I guess, an offensive model, bringing that to the defensive side. How much leeway does he have as far as designing what the defense will look like this year? And I guess, what do you think of just that concept in general, like putting in more multiple looks and personnel groups and things like that on the defensive side?
Yeah, always looking at things. And that's one of the things about this off season, whether it's on offense or defense, is that, we've had so much free time to think and draw stuff up and investigate different people's schemes. But at the end of the day, you got to find out what you do well. And, to answer your question about, whose decision that is, it's everybody over there. And I think, that's what's great about the defensive staff is that, you have Larry, you have Greg, you have Kerry, and then you have Al and Matt, and they all get together on this thing and they talk it through and they work through it and they do a great job communicating to our players. And so at the end of the day, we're just going to try to figure out what best fits the guys, because this year's group is different than last year's group. And that's, I think I've said this a million times, is that's the key to being a great college coach, is being able to adapt to the personnel that you have to put them in the best position to be successful. And so that's what we're searching for, and where that takes us, we'll see.
Along those same lines with the coaching staff, Virginia Tech ran into a situation last weekend where they were missing 4 coaches. I think they even found out, like, maybe the morning of the game they weren't going to have their defensive coordinator. What sort of contingencies are you planning for right now, and do you use any of the sort of scrimmage opportunities you might have between now and the start of the season to do those in a way that you haven't had to in the past?
Well, let me first say that this has been a difficult time, because we understand the ramifications and the consequences for our health, but also just in terms of playing a season of testing positive. And that's for the players, and they've made great sacrifices, but it's also for the coaches. And it's very difficult because, for those of us who have school-age children at home, it's very, very difficult. And, to make sacrifices. And, some of us are not sleeping in our homes, and it's not easy. And so we're trying to figure all that part of it out. So that's the first thing that I don't know if anybody realizes the sacrifice that everybody's making in order to try to play this season. And yes, to answer your question, we have contingency plans for a lot of reasons. There's false positives that happen. There's all kinds of things that could show up. So we have to have that in place. We had that in place going into the preseason. We've had these conversations that if somebody were to go down, what would happen next? And, between Kevin and I on offense, we call it together, and it's the same thing with Kerry and Greg on defense. So we feel pretty good there. If something ever happened to Matt Barnes, I think Parker Fleming could step into that role and we could put him there. So, we have really good contingency plans in place, and we just keep talking about them. And when they come up, we'll address them.
All right, next up is Dan Hope from 11 Warriors with Kyle Rowland on deck. Dan.
Ryan, on the player side of that, obviously you guys have to be prepared for the possibility of losing, anybody for 3 games at a time. So does that change the way that you build a depth chart for this season? Do you have to be 3 deep or 4 deep?
It's not going to really change the way that we build it, but it's just something that, we make sure the guys understand, is that they're 1-2 plays away, or like you said, at any point they could be, starting or even backups. And so with our team of 120 guys, that's everybody there. We're going to need them all. And it's just more of an awareness and understanding that, guys just aren't scout team players, because typically, as you get to this time of year, you start to just kind of split up into scout team. And so that's not the case. Guys need to be engaged. They need to be ready to go. People talk about the next man up mentality, but it's going to take all of us to get this done. So we're not really changing how we practice, but it's just more of awareness, and it's more of accountability across the board.
You mentioned, those sacrifices that you all have to make as coaches. Just how hard is it for you, to have to kind of manage all these different things while also trying to prepare your team to try to go win a national championship?
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge for sure, but it's the same challenge for everybody, and we're all under the same rules and the same, situation and scenario. So we just have to handle it better than everybody else. I'm not saying it's easy, certainly isn't, but it's like going to play a game, in rainy weather. Both teams have to deal with it. The team that deals with the best is going to prevail, and that's kind of the way we have to approach this. It's not perfect, but we just got to handle it better than our opponents.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yep.
All right, next up is Kyle Rowland from the Toledo Blade and Jared Smalley on deck. Kyle.
Hey, Ryan. The quality of play hasn't been a thing of beauty so far this year. A lot of that's had to do with outbreaks teams have had, and it's limited their practice time. The Big Ten's plan with doing such significant testing, I think we're a month out from the season. Do you think that'll kind of alleviate issues for Big Ten teams, and you guys will be more in sync when you start?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's yet to be written. I don't know. I think that some of it is, like you said, the testing positive. Some of it is guys getting injured and then being out for 2 to 3 weeks leading up to the season. There's a lot of things at play there. Some of it is, maybe they didn't practice as much as they typically have for whatever reason that is. So I don't know. It's something that we're talking about as a coaching staff every day, trying to figure out, how some teams in the NFL or, college football have dealt with situations, who's had success, who maybe hasn't, what the glaring issues are and how we can try to get ahead of those things.
Hey, you going to get in trouble for wearing a blue mask?
Yeah, that's not an option.
All right, next up is Jared Smalley from WCMH with Doug Lamarice on deck. Jared.
Hi, Ryan. Wanted to ask you about the unique situation you have going into the opener this year. Typically, a coach would have a plan to play so many guys coming out of training camp and get a look at them in game action. But because of the unique situation this year, playing a conference game, playing a good team, how do you view that roster management as you go into the first game?
It's unique. It's different. You have to rely on the guys that have experience, that what they've done, because you at least know what they've done in the past. They have a body of work. And then you try to do the best you can for those who maybe don't have a body of work over these next few weeks to try to get some experience and figure out what you can expect when they go on the field. You really don't ever really know, but we're trying to put them in the stadium. We're trying to put them in the live situations. We're trying to put them into game situations the best we possibly can so we can project. You're right, before a conference schedule, if you have a few games ahead of time, you have a little bit better feel of what to expect. We don't have that luxury this year. So we'll just work through it and try to figure out best ways to create a game environment in practice and go from there.
And Ryan, one question for you on your young receivers. We saw a little video clip your team put together of them, I guess it was last week, and they can make phenomenal catches, undoubtedly. Obviously, there's a lot more to it than that when it comes to getting on the field at receiver. How is that group developing, and do you anticipate a few of those guys being significantly involved in your planning?
Yeah, well, some of them are going to have to play. We don't have a ton of depth there, so they're going to have to step up in a big way. And it goes back to, this, once you put the pads on, it's no longer 7-on-7 or rivals football camp. I mean, you got to block, you got to catch the ball, you got to take care of the football. It's all those things. You got to play tough. Late in drives, you got to push through fatigue, all those things that come up in playing a game. There's certainly a lot of talent there, but those guys are going to have to step up in those areas. And yeah, we're going to have to play young, and we're going to have to play some depth there, and that's just the way it's going to be. It's the way it's always been. Yeah, there's a chance there. We just have to kind of see how it goes and see how those guys can handle playing in a game situation and taking care of the little things and playing hard and strong and tough.
Thanks.
All right, next up is Doug Lamarice from Cleveland.com with Adam Rittenberg on deck. Doug.
Hey, Ryan, following up on some of the safety stuff, how do you envision, I know it's still early, but the battle with Josh Proctor and Marcus Hooker back there, and what's the difference of maybe those guys fighting for a spot versus also preparing at times to maybe play together back there? I'm just kind of wondering how safety's unfolding so far. Yeah, no, it's a great question. I think both those guys bring an interesting skill set, and like you said, they're going to be out there together a decent amount as well. We can come up with packages where they both will be out there, and they should be. I mean, they're guys who have now been in the program for multiple years, and this is their year to step up. I think they've both done a very good job. They both bring different skill sets. Marcus is a rangy guy who can, really, he's got good ball skills. He can read a quarterback's demeanor and drive on the ball. Proctor has really good range, good length. He can blitz. You guys remember, some of the games last year he blitzed. He's physical, but he also can cover. So both of those guys are very active so far early in camp. And I think both of them are going to have a huge impact on the season if they just continue to develop, and Kerry's doing a great job with them. And then just going back a little bit, we've covered this some with you, but when Christina Johnson came in as the new president, I'm just curious, maybe the first time you actually talked to her or got to have a conversation with her, and just what you think, what does a good relationship look like between a football coach and a university president at a school like Ohio State? Yeah, Christine has been excellent. The communication has been wonderful. Had several conversations, over the phone early on, and then she came in and actually came by one of our workouts, had a conversation there, and then had an opportunity to go to her house about a week ago and have dinner, socially distanced with Gene Smith and some of the other fall coaches, which is wonderful. And but to answer your question there, I think what is a healthy relationship? I just think one of communication, one of respect, and one of alignment. And I think one of the great things we have right now here at Ohio State is
we have alignment from the president, the athletic director, and the head coach, and honored to call them my bosses, and got a lot of respect for the way she handled this whole situation.
Thanks, Ryan.
All right, next up is Adam Rittenberg from ESPN with Clay Hall on deck. Adam.
Hey, Ryan, just following up on what you said about the sacrifices that you and your staff are making. Was that like an individual discussion with each coach, or how did you kind of figure out, who was going to not be at home, who was going to be at home, and how you're going to manage that?
Yeah, didn't certainly put any guidelines in place or tell somebody how to handle their business at all. We just talked about how having school-age children who are going to school is a risk. They're at school, they're exposed. Some of the young youth, sports leagues are still going on and they're playing, and so it's an exposure and it's an unknown, and so to be aware of it, and each guy's handling it their own way, and it's it isn't easy because they're school age kids are going to school and coming back in, and then you have your wives, and so it's hard. It's not easy. It's a new dynamic, and it's a challenge for all of us. But letting each guy handle it their own way.
Have you guys figured out kind of opportunities for them to still see each other, just kind of socially distant at the facility or anything like that, or so they're able to see each other a little bit?
Well, yeah, not at the facility. We can't have them come here, but at home, yeah, we try to do as much as we can about being outside and socially distancing and still trying to figure it all out. I don't know, my family, we're still trying to figure this part of it out. This is all new to us. It's a major challenge, but we're working through it and trying to figure out what's best. But like you said, right now it's kind of more outside and even, when I go in the house, I'm wearing a mask and then, trying to figure all that part of it out. But yeah, it's one of those things that our staff, is very, very concerned about, their day-to-day operation. Here when we're in the building, we feel really, really safe. The daily tests that we're going through, we know there's 170 people that test daily that are clean. It's a great feeling to know in this building when you're around our bubble right here, you're good. But once you leave here, everything changes, and it's honestly it's scary because it can ruin your whole season just like that one day with one exposure. So yeah, it's something that's always, and we can't get tired of it. We talk about it every day, and I think sometimes the coaches and the players look at me like, Coach, I know we have to be smart with it, but if you get tired of it and you take a deep breath, it'll get you real fast. So trying to be really good and on top of it.
Thanks.
All right, up next is Clay Hall from WSYX with Joey Kaufman on deck. Clay.
Hey, Coach. How many position battles are you having right now? I realize it's fairly early in camp. Is right tackle up for grabs, or is that nailed down at this point?
All positions are up right now. I know you'll laugh at me and you say Justin Fields, but everybody. So we're all competing right now. There's no depth chart put together. Everybody's out there competing and fighting and getting reps, and you just don't know right now what's going to happen in a week. So there's no use putting a depth chart out right now. We'll just keep competing, giving guys reps and banking those reps and see where we're at here in another week or two.
You said you're going in the shoe tomorrow. Could you see this kind of being like a high school atmosphere where these guys can actually hear their mom and dad or yelling at them, or what? Does it take any edge off the competition that you're in this empty place?
I think for some it can, and this is something that we've talked about at length as a team, is that you have to bring your own energy. And being in an empty stadium is unique. We went last Saturday. We're going to go again today. We're going to try to pipe in a little bit of music and maybe have some crowd noise as we move into next week, just so that they get a feel for what that really is going to be like. I know the Big Ten is still trying to get the guidelines around what game day is going to be like in terms of piping in music and noise and what that means when the ball's being snapped. So yeah, we're going to try to replicate that the best we can, but we know it's not like playing in front of over 100,000 people every day or every week, excuse me. And so we're going to have to bring our own energy. When you run out of that tunnel, it's going to be a different feel. But like I said to the guys, you just have to know that Buckeye Nation, even though they're not there in the stadium, they're with you, and they're millions strong, from coast to coast and even outside the country, and we just have to understand that, and that is unique. It's different, and so we'll keep talking about that and addressing it and make sure our guys understand.
Thank you.
All right, last set of questions today will come from Joey Kaufman from the Columbus Dispatch. Joey.
Ryan, just to clarify what you said earlier about 170 people being tested and they're clean, that means nobody's tested negative yet for you guys?
Yeah, so, we don't get into who's tested, positive, negative, anything like that. But what I was saying was, we have 170 that we test. So we test 120 guys on the team, and then we test 50 guys in terms of staff and different people that have what we call tier 1, have close interaction with our players. And so at any moment, every day we get that test in the morning, and 15 minutes later you get a thumbs up or a thumbs down. And so, obviously if there was a positive, you'd have to go home and then take a PCR test to confirm it, so that if it was a false positive, you would know that it was confirmed at that point. And so, while there are some false positives, that's why the PCR is in place. But one thing for sure is that if you have everybody that tests negative for that 24 hours, you have a clean operation, and that's the idea.
And just as far as practicing at the shoe, are you guys doing that more this preseason than you've done in the past?
Yes.
Is there any benefit for it?
I think so. I mean, it's like when we get done with the game, I saw Belichick's interview when they asked him if you ever seen anything like that first game, and he said, yeah, practice. So it kind of made me think, why don't we just practice in the shoe? Because that's what it's going to be like during the game. So we can't say, well, we've never been in that type of environment before. We have. And will it help? I hope so. That's why we're doing it.